Hello everyone, welcome. I'm recording this video for perhaps a wide variety of future purposes depending on which course you're in. You might take my speech course where we do instructions as a speech, or you might be in my technical writing course where you do both a speech and a written paper. So I'm going to start this video out today by just basically explaining what is needed in an assignment dealing with instructions. I will then talk about what a good presentation would look like, and then we'll end with discussing a written document. Let us begin. Technical instructions. So I frame this from sort of a technical writing standpoint, no matter what the context is. So instructions are very important sorts of documents to get right. You need to be able to write good instructions, and they're very hard to write because they're very complex documents. Oftentimes they're very ineffective documents. Whenever we think about instructions, you usually might think about something like IKEA furniture instructions, where all they do is give you pictures without even like any written words. I don't know about the rest of you, but those kinds of instructions aren't too sufficient because I, for one, have zero common sense. So I always appreciate when good instructions are written. It doesn't matter if you're doing a speech or if you're writing a document. Instructions are good. It's a good the assignment of instructions is good for communication purposes. So who's your audience? We'll start out with who's your audience. So your audience for instructions is the lowest common denominator. So think about the most clueless person in the world, probably me, right? Think about the most clueless person in the world. You have to be able to explain to them clearly and effectively how to do complex task. That's the first thing you got to think of. Who's your audience? Well, your audience might be a slightly more sophisticated audience too. So in that case, you have to kind of assume what type of background knowledge that audience might need to do your instructions. Excuse me. So you have to consider your questions of audience here. So it says on the assignment sheet, the crux of instructions is usability. A successful set of instructions make people do the work effectively without confusion. They help repeat the same task by many people. Instructions also help to make people do it in a certain way instead of other ways so that their task becomes much more efficient and effective. Thus, instructions are important for being useful. So it says on this sheet, instructions are usually the worst written documents. Right? I discussed that a second ago. There's tons of companies out there that have products. They hire technical writers. Then once you actually get to the instructions, you're like, what am I reading? So they're very often not written very well. When are instructions not written well? Sometimes they assume too much about what readers know. Sometimes they clutter pages with too much information. There's a such thing as information overload with instructions. Sometimes they're not designed well. Maybe the document looks a little cluttered. Oftentimes a nice simple design is what we need. Whatever the case is, there's lots of things that can go wrong with writing good instructions. So it's a matter of getting it right. So for this assignment, I'm going to ask for a couple of different things. First, I want you to ask yourself what would be a good topic to do for instruction. So ideally, it should be something that a little bit about, right? So maybe a complex task, that you can use to at least maybe 5 or 6 steps to explain to an audience. So you don't want to make it something too simple, right? That's the biggest thing. You want to pick something real complex enough to where you can go over multiple steps. Oftentimes, instructions will go bad when task at hand is very simple to do. Like, let's say a recipe with 2 or 3 steps, right? That's often too simple. So you want to pick something complicated enough where you can, get something out of it. I encourage everyone to think, about what they might want to do based off their major. Maybe there's some kind of task in your major you can do. You can do something as simple as how to put something together, right? Or how to navigate a website. Tons and tons of options for doing instructions. So have fun with it. But the first thing that I'm going to ask is that you send me an email proposing a topic to me. Maybe explain to me what it is you want to do, how many steps you see taking place in this process, and then that's it. And I'll pretty much send you an email back saying, yes, go for it, sounds good. Or maybe you're doing a little too much, maybe you're not doing enough. So that's basically the purpose of the email. Just want to kind of communicate with you beforehand on what you're doing your instructions on. And just as a kind of sounds good or think about this a little bit more process. If I don't do that step, then sometimes these things can turn out disastrous. So the next stage, again, it depends on the class. I'm filming this video for multiple purposes, depending on future classes. But you're going to need to describe a process. So think about whatever you're doing is a long sequence of steps. So divide the line into concrete blocks or segments or groups or subgroups. So maybe you have like 6 different steps, but maybe in one step you might have 2 sub-steps. That's basically what that means. You want to organize as effectively as you can. So like I said, if a certain step is kind of complicated, you want to break it up into smaller sub-steps. So that's basically what that means. So this assignment sheet's very particular because for my technical writing course in spring 2020. But again, depending on the future, this will be relevant to all of you. But the next thing that I'm asked for after giving the instructions is, that you kind of prepare it in a PowerPoint sort of format, to give to the class. And for those of you who are taking technical writing, I ask that you do that because it kind of allows you to see things that you needed to elaborate more on, when you give it in the spoken form, right? Something that might not be so clear. So you might get some instruction, you might give some instructions and then get feedback. Oh, okay, I definitely need to fix this. So it's a good idea to give, to do a presentation. Or in speech class, it's the whole point of the class anyway. You're giving presentations and learning how to speak in front of people while being clear and effective. So I'm basically going to ask for I said, about a 6-minute presentation or so. So you want to break your PowerPoint up into as many steps as you need, or sub steps within a step, and then basically just be able to present effectively. And that's I will kind of gauge you based on how well you communicate with your audience, your delivery as well, but much more so for content. I'll check to see if your content matches up, if there's whatever, stand to see whatever it is you need to work on from there. So in the case for technical writing class here, that'll be worth 5% of your overall grade within the assignment. So, and of course, that'll be worth more if you're taking each class. So, like I said, as many steps as necessary. We'll talk about what all needs to go into your instructions in a moment. Then I have some sample subjects that you might do too. So I've mentioned what your audience is. Like I said, think of the lowest common denominator, or if it's a specific type of audience, make sure you clarify what the audience needs to know before they do this task. But in your content of your instructions, and this applies both to the spoken presentation form as well as the written document. So you need something there explaining what all does a person need before they start your task. Maybe they need certain tools, or maybe they need certain ingredients. They need to understand something before they take on this task. So at the very beginning, maybe explain, and it's like a slide or two, or in the written documents, on a certain step. Here's what you need, to be able to do this, to do these instructions. Then, of course, after that, a set of steps, at least 5, 6. It can be more, right? But at least 5 concrete steps. And like I said, there can be sub-steps within the steps, where you demonstrate how to pursue your task. And each task should also include a visual to supplement your written text. Right, so basically what I'm asking for here is I want you to be able to do your task. So whenever you do your presentation, I want you to be able to use your own pictures. So let's say that you do a recipe. So I want you to actually do the recipe yourself, take pictures of each step, and then include it in your slideshow, or included in those pictures in your written documents. The pictures are there to help you sort of supplement whatever the written text is. Right? So you're in well-written instructions, you're trying to appeal both to people who learn better through words and also people who learn better through images. It is a little redundant, but you want both sorts of things to accompany one another. So I ask that you use your own pictures. Don't use pictures that you get from the general web, or you will be graded harshly. Okay, got to do your own steps. Take pictures, include them in your documents. And then, of course, the conventions. When you conclude, you show what the finished end result is. So, what are some conventions of instructions? Short, easy to read sentences. imperative sentences where you command the reader. So what we mean by that is you usually start with like an action verb, right? So your sentences are written in ways that command. So do this. On the next step, stir the mixture, right? So you want to command your reader in most of your sentences, to do whatever it is you want to do, what you want them to do. And of course, as always, you want your instructions to be written in the active voice, right? You're commanding someone to do something, so you want that person to be the subject of your sentence. Once you get to the written document, you can organize using bullet points, numbers, right? Of course, if you're doing the slideshow, you're doing this over multiple slides, right? So basically, though, just simple, easy to read, commands. Not too much. Like I said, you don't want to overwhelm your reader or your listener. You want to give them just enough. Then, of course, starting to talk more about the written document at this point. But you want to make sure that you have effective document design. So when you're talking about the written document, you just want to maintain consistency, right? So if you're using bullet points to organize instructions, maintain a consistent style in that way. If you're using numbers, maintain a consistent style. Always double space. Don't leave too much white space anywhere within the document. You don't want to enter too many times. So long as the design looks clean and consistent, right? So your design will be a mix of steps with written text, and then, of course, your images. You're going to be including your images in your written instructions too. So a clean, well-written design. So, and then, of course, the deadlines are here spelled out as well. So it doesn't, if you're taking speech, like I said, you'll just do the speech part. But if you're taking technical writing, you will do the speech before the written document. Kind of see what you're doing, what you need to communicate more on. I think I said too, for the written document, I'm expecting 5 or 6 steps, about 1,000 words or so. This is a type of paper that a word count is important. So about 1,000 words. If you got 750 words and it's effective, great, right? You don't want to write too much, but somewhere in that ballpark, maybe between like 750 and 1,000 words. By the time you explain what you need to do the instructions and everything else, that should be pretty clear. I want to briefly point you to the resource that you have too, which is, of course, your textbook. So in the technical communication textbook, there is an entire chapter on instructions, which is really, there's some really good stuff here. Just kind of see, I'm just flipping through it. It mentions a couple of things that I didn't mention just now. A clear and limiting title, right? You want to be clear in your title what your instructions are. It shows you how to incorporate some good visuals. What's an appropriate level of detail and technicality? So it gives you some tips on knowing your audience. You always want to tell readers why they are doing a certain step, right? You want to give them a sort of a logical rationale for each step that they're doing. The book here even gives nice sorts of instructions for doing instruction. Then it gives you some example document designs too. As you notice on this one, the ABCs of CPR, it's maintaining a nice, consistent design with bullet points. The appropriate headings are bolded. It's giving visuals. It's not doing too much. Everything else that I just mentioned in the video is here as well. Yeah, just take a look through that, flip through it. You can see as well another example here. But like I said, whatever it is that you choose to do, you want to run it by me first. You want to make sure it's complicated enough to do a good job with this. So that should be enough explanation until next time.